Welcome to Cybermania, Cyber Talks with the brightest minds in cybersecurity. Discussing risks, AI, emerging threats, workforce challenges, and more. With your host, May Brooks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cybermania. With me today is Sujit Christy. Sujit, how are you today?
Very well, Millie, and thank you for having me for this conversation.
Thank you for joining me. I've been taking up a lot of your time lately, and I'm so glad that you still find the time to join me for this conversation.
It's always a pleasure. It's mutual. So I would say it's always fun talking to you.
Thank you. So first and foremost, as always, we start these conversations with you telling us a little bit about you, yourself, and your crazy story in cybersecurity.
Right. So I wear multiple hats. So one of the hats that I wear is a CISO role for a large group of companies in Sri Lanka, which is called the John Keels Group. So I function as the group CISO. And I also advise different people or different organizations in various countries. I also, function as a volunteer with ISU too. So you can see my hands are full with various roles.
Yeah, that's basically how we met via the
That's
ISC2
right.
Chapter Advisory Committee years and years ago.
Yes.
Yes, and we were fortunate enough to meet in person a few times as well in Vegas in Security Congress, and only a few weeks ago when I was in Sri Lanka.
That's
So
right.
yes, it was
And you
an
miss
absolute.
Singapore. We met in
And
Singapore
in
as
Singapore,
well.
yes, I forgot Singapore. You're right. I think Singapore was probably the first time we met in person, wasn't it?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And before that, we did a podcast for the
Yeah.
ISU2 Colombo chapter.
Yes, so you've been very active in the cybersecurity world for many, many years.
That's
And
right.
I want to ask you a little bit about how you transitioned, because you started your career back about, I think, 25 years ago, right?
That's right. Yes. So
Well,
it's
yeah.
very interesting. I mean, I was with KPMG in New Zealand as an auditor, and at that point in time, the IT was involved more in terms of providing analytic services for the accounting assurance practice. So I kind of started looking around, okay, what do I do to get into IT and assurance, IT assurance? So there are two things which came up. One was ISACA's CISA. So because I was
Naturally.
in the audit, so
Yeah.
naturally that was the first option. And then I said, okay, now that I've got that ticked off, CISSP was next in my list, but it was just a list in my to-do list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Until I met my mentor, good friend, and the current CIO, who actually said, if you
Why?
have CISSP, I would consider you to be in my team because I went looking for him and I wanted to roll with him. So he said, CISSP, take it or leave it. And, I just came home, registered for the exam. And it was just about 6 weeks, I would say. And this thing, so it was in 2005, I got it. And that's how I transitioned into cybersecurity at a time where people were not even focusing much on security.
Yeah.
But today it's a hot topic.
Yeah, it has been a hot topic, and it's actually interesting to see so many people, and I'm fortunate to have people join me on this podcast from so many different backgrounds. Some are engineers, some CPAs, some never went to academia, and it's amazing. And I think that this is one of the things that makes this industry so interesting is we have such diverse thinkers. We should have more
Ab-
diverse thinkers. I've been advocating for
Absolutely.
it for a while,
And
but yeah, I
and
think
the
that,
interesting thing is, May, as you rightly said, we are uniquely positioned. So we cannot contain ourselves into a square and say this is where we function. Cybersecurity is cross-functional and cross-domain as well. So every
it is.
sphere, every field, there's a need for this.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you did mention, and rightfully so, that cybersecurity is definitely growing. And I want to ask you about GRC because you started your career as an auditor, then transitioned into cybersecurity. And we see a lot of talk around GRC and its role today. And is it still as important as it was? What will AI will do to that field? And I would love to hear your perspective.
It's still relevant to me, but where I
Absolutely.
see is the fatigue to go away with AI coming in. So the bulk of the work would be done by AI, and the humans would use that data to make decisions. So it would definitely enhance and make us more, what do you call, I would say we would be more effective in our decision making. So that's what I'm saying. And the other thing is we would also have data, a very real time, quickly as well. Because today, if you look at it, there's so much of time it takes to compile that data, and by the time the data is presented, the world has moved to a different milepost. So
That's true.
many a times we would see the data is old, and some of the decisions may not be accurate when you make that data.
True. So do you think that I completely agree with you that it will enhance our ability to make decisions, our visibility of data, but do you think it will increase or decrease the demand for GRC professionals?
It will increase because,
Really?
yeah. So,
Okay.
so the reason why I'm saying it'll increase, we would also need to have people in different roles, right? So when you talk about privacy, you talk about risk management and various other roles. So I also firmly believe while a person who is going to be driving privacy would also have to have knowledge about cybersecurity. Talk about
Yeah.
risk management, right? So no longer it's business risk. It's going to be cyber risk included. So all these roles would also require people to come in and meet those requirements.
And it sounds like you're talking about people coming from different backgrounds from the traditional, let's start in IT and then move into cybersecurity. It does sound like you're sort of looking for people, and you are recruiting people all the time, that are more focused on the business side, on the risk side. So what advice would you give people who are currently looking to go into cybersecurity early on? What sort of skills would you advise them to build?
Learn the basics, right? And attitude is paramount because have an attitude saying you can do it and start learning. So there's always room for improvement, even for us as professionals, having been in this industry, there's always something new to learn every day. So that
Oh,
that curve
absolutely.
is never going to end, right? So it's a journey and we will continue to learn. And it will be very good to have people who come from diverse environments, bringing their domain expertise and combining that with the cyber. That would definitely enhance. Because in one of our earlier conversations, we talked about how cyber will enhance the value proposition, right? It's
Yeah.
no longer a technology, a siloed discussion. It is a business enabler. So how would we help the top and the bottom line? So that's where this comes in. So anyone who has domain experience and learning, acquiring cybersecurity skills is going to be of very good help for them.
Fantastic. Yes, we did have a lot of conversations around it, and I completely agree because I think that at the end of the day, we need to sort of the maturity, the next level of cybersecurity maturity, is to, as you said, position ourselves as value creators, not just a cost center. So that is something that we had several discussions on. And I want to ask you, as someone who came from the auditing world and the classical GRC compliance focused world, how do you help organizations, companies shift from that very compliance oriented point of view to a more risk aware culture?
Interesting question. Because the advantage we have is we understand how controls have to be implemented. So coming from an assurance background, so we understand controls better, right? So when you implement a control, you don't implement it for the sake of implementing a control, right? So you look at it from a risk perspective. Are we going to address an issue or are we going to minimize an issue? So that risk conversation with a control implementation is definitely helpful. So I'm also able to have a better conversation with the business rather than having just a technology conversation. So it's a process conversation than a control conversation. So that's where
Yeah.
I see that experience, the assurance experience, enhances my work, especially dealing with the senior leadership in every organization.
Yeah, and in your current position, you didn't really mention a lot about the group. So maybe you can share a little bit about the group that you're currently leading, the CISO role, the group CISO of.
So the organization is actually functioning in 8 different industry verticals. So one of them is leisure, retail, manufacturing of food products. Then we are into insurance, IT, and plantation, right? So that
Easy
brings in a
peasy.
lot of this thing. And also, I forgot to mention transportation and logistics as well.
Yeah.
So it comprises of different companies focusing on different activities. So it's about 70 plus companies and 8 industry verticals. So it's pretty huge for a company in Sri Lanka.
It is pretty huge, and it's also very challenging because you have to understand the different points of views of different industries and different threat actors in different industries. It's not the same if you're in plantation or in the food industry.
True.
So, how do you have those conversations with the group, with the local CISOs, and how does it all circle back up to you?
Right. So there are different what do you call cadence set up with different people. So we do have conversations with the respective industry groups, and every industry group is actually led by a CISO. We call them a mini CISO. So they are required to double up for the security function as well. So when they come in, they have a conversation in terms of their business requirements. So we look at from a security point of view and then tell them, okay, what's best for them. Then from a group's perspective, there are common things which we say, okay, which applies across the group. So that lays the foundation and the businesses are required to build on top of that. So it's a federated environment where you don't control everything. So you allow the businesses to function within a framework. So that makes it easier, but also challenging.
Very
Because
challenging.
where do you let loose? Where do you hold back? That conversation is always a challenge.
Absolutely. And when we had the conversation, one of our last conversations was around my doctorate research. And we talked about how cybersecurity influences the business strategy. And you gave some wonderful examples of both ends, both the business coming up with a strategy and then how cybersecurity can support it, and the other way around, how cybersecurity came up with ideas that actually supported the business function. Can you elaborate on a few of those examples?
Right. So we've taken a decision that we would adopt the zero trust framework, right? A model. So that lays the foundation across all businesses. So when we look at telling people, okay, you have to secure your workload or your processes, then we try and embed some of these principles into it. So let's look at it from an application workload perspective. So we say, okay, you categorize your workload based on the criticality. And then you decide how do you want to build your first line of defense, the second line of defense. So we believe the first line of defense is now moving to the identity. So to secure the identity, what do you need to do? And we also try and explain to them or help them understand in the absence of such controls, how it would actually impact the business, right? So we try and categorize the users into different groups, like enterprise users, your administrators. And then we say, okay, where do you need to increase your security posture, where you can actually, liberalize a little bit so that they have the freedom to do their business. So in every aspect, we look at from an enablement perspective, and the ground rules are laid, right? Saying, okay, these are minimal controls you need to have in place. And then we also say, wherever required, these are recommended practice. So every year or every 6 months, we review the recommended controls and then decide whether it would stay as a recommended or would it
Or
become a
become,
minimum baseline? Right?
okay.
So that way the businesses also know where they need to actually change or where they need to improve their posture.
And
So
it
that
sounds like a
converse,
very, yeah, it sounds like a very well balanced conversation that you basically grow and mature all the time and don't just come there. And that is something that I tell CISOs and people I talk to all the time. Don't try to go from year one to year 13. Even in school, you don't go to year one and the next year you do your GCSEs. No, it takes time. You have to grow and learn and mature from various perspectives. It's not a matter of how smart you are, it's a matter of learning and growing. So I love the fact that you take things that are guidelines and at some point transition them into mandatory baselines. I think that is
absolutely.
a good.
And being diversified, it's also very challenging. Let's say if you're in one vertical, let's say if you're a bank, it's very easy to draw the baseline and say, okay, this is how you operate.
And you
So here
also have the
we
support from compliance and from the management team usually.
absolutely. So here we need to understand who needs an elevated level of security, who needs a least amount of security, but then it's a trade-off, but we can't compromise. Like while I
Yeah.
use the word trade-off, it is not saying, okay, you trade off the risk completely. No, it is not.
No, you have a different risk appetite, I'm guessing, for
Absolutely.
various vectors.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
that is something I want to ask you because you work not just in your current role, in previous roles as well, and in the chapter, you've been a mentor for so many CISOs and so many people in cybersecurity. And I want to ask you, what sort of advice do you give CISOs or people aspiring to become security leaders on communicating risk effectively to the leadership, to the board, to executives in the organization?
Traditionally, people use numbers to demonstrate or convey a message. But what I always tell people is narrate a story, which they will be able to relate to. Take an example of a cybersecurity incident which has happened within the organization or somewhere else. And then map your controls and say, okay, these are controls we have in place. So it gives us assurance that similar incidents would not occur in our organization. Or you take that instance and say, hey, we lack controls in this particular area, so we need to ramp up. That way, they are able to, the business people are able to appreciate and understand your point of view. Otherwise, when you say, hey, we need this and why we need, because they are not able to directly see a return on investment or a direct impact on the business when you implement a control. Now, just to extend that conversation, now sometimes, traditionally what we're seeing is malware infections, right? So typically we would say, okay, this many machines are infected. Today, I asked my team, the extended team, I asked them, tell me how much time do you actually spend in triaging an incident? What is the mean time to detect? What is the mean time to respond? What's the cost to the company?
Yeah, if you can't take it and you translate this cost us X amount of dollars because it took us X
It,
hours, meaning that this machine was off, the engineer couldn't work, our security team had to
spend
disinfect
extra
the.
time.
Exactly,
Yes,
exactly. And if you
exactly.
put it in monetary terminology, then the business side can understand what we do. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
we always tell them, oh, it takes a meantime to detect 72 hours. Okay, but what does that mean? Can people work during those 72 hours? Can't they work? How many people are affected by this? What will it do to the, I don't know, to the manufacturing line, etc.? So we have to put it in
So
their
going
words.
back to your earlier question, you started off with AI. This is where AI can come to help. So it can
Absolutely.
reduce the mean time to detect. And if we can tell the system, these are actions you take based on the signals you have. So isolate, terminate, or block the user. And then you take action from there on. So what we need in place is an escalation matrix and a good incident response team, a
Yeah.
plan and a team to execute it. Right. So
And
so ve- every time I attend to an incident, right, I'm not talking about a breach, but let's say there's a suspected attempt to log into a system, then we start querying, okay, why did it happen? What's the reason? Why was this not done? And then when we have this conversation, sometimes we actually, it's it's what do you call, it opens a completely a different dimension for that conversation, right? Sometimes you know that those applications were there, people are using it, but you have completely lost sight of it. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
we try and go back and ask every quarter. We ask them, okay, have you got an inventory? Is the inventory up to date? Do you know who is using it for? What is it being used for? Look at the technology life cycle. Have you retired what you need to retire? Right? Because sometimes it's very easy for the business to say, hey, it's working well, so why worry?
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it. It's fine. It's fine.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's where what works well is where we have a problem. What
Yeah, because
doesn't work, it actually manifests immediately, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's where we're sort of blindsided and we don't know what's going on. So I want to sort of zoom out a little bit and talk about something that you've been very vocal about over the years. And you talked a lot about cyber safety, not just in the organization, but for the general society. You've been a very strong advocate for security awareness and for security education across your nation and other regions as well. I want to ask you, what sort of drove you to start exploring and talking about this side of cybersecurity?
It's a simple analogy, right? I want my neighborhood to be safe. I'm talking from a physical safety. If let's say a few blocks away from my house, if there's a break-in, I think every neighbor should know that there has been an attempt or something happened there, so that everybody can be aware that there's an incident and the next target is potentially one of us. Let's apply the same thing to the cyber. If it can happen to somebody else, sooner or later, it's going to happen to us. So what I always tell when I especially talk to my colleagues in various organizations, people say, okay, let's do an awareness session and let's talk about our policies. So I try and avoid the use policy in every conversation. So I actually again start narrating stories. Are your loved ones safe? What are they doing? Are they in the social media? Are their accounts safe? Have they, enabled the privacy features? Have they enhanced their security practices? So the conversation is, if they are not safe, the family is not safe, and the family member who is going to be working in our ecosystem is also not safe, and they actually carry that risk into the organization. Right? So that conversation is more effective.
Absolutely.
And it's not something you and I alone can do, right? So we need everybody out there talking about it. And even this evening, I'm going to have a similar conversation with somebody where we're going to talk about some of the use cases as to what happened, because people need to be aware in terms of the types of threats or the incidents which are actually happening in our society.
Oh, I completely agree. I had a very similar conversation that will come up probably before our episode with Owen Connolly, who's a CISO here in the UAE. And one of the things that we see here in the UAE is because people come to the UAE from all over the world, we suddenly have visibility to things that I personally never had visibility to, because I will have a conversation with someone from Sri Lanka and hear about something that is currently going on in Sri Lanka, and then I will hear from some other colleague about something that is happening in France, and two months down the line, I will see the same thing in the UAE. And those are those global trends, and I think that those conversations that we have are so valuable. And you mentioned it in your local community, and you talked about physical security. Like, if I know that one of my neighbors' houses was burgled, maybe I will turn on the alarm and make sure that all the locks are secured and everything before I leave the house. And it's the same. And I think that this is somewhere where the cybersecurity global community, local and global, should have more conversations, more open conversations. I know that in some regions, some regulators try to create those think tanks, like the banking think tank or the healthcare think tank, and we'll have to have those conversations. But I think that there's a lot of mistrust and paranoia sometimes in sharing if I had an incident, if it comes out. So I think that one of the most important things when you create a community is to create that trust. I know that if I will call you and tell you, Sujit, I have a problem, can we talk about whatever? I know that it will never get out. That's
Correct.
because we already have that trust. But I think that this is something that as an industry, we should aspire to.
Absolutely.
And creating those groups, creating those networks. So,
Correct. You're absolutely right, because sometimes people do reach out to me and share. Or sometimes they say, hey, this has happened to a friend of mine.
yeah,
But
always, it's
then we
always
know,
afraid.
okay, we understand, okay, we will not talk about it, right? But the other thing which I also, in one of my interviews which I gave last week to one of the media companies, I said, we don't have publicly available data,
So true.
right? So it's more of a survey which is conducted by different organizations, Verizon, for instance, right? So it's a sample-based data. So country-specific data is limited, and not everybody would go to a police station and file a complaint or even report to a specific organization. Because sometimes they feel, why should I go and say something, what happened to me? Because sometimes it's not about losing money. In some cases, it's harassment or bullying,
Mhm.
or it's a
And
deep
there's nothing
fake.
to do.
Yeah, so
And you're also
sometimes
afraid of the repercussions. You go and report it, suddenly the regulator is all over you. Was there a breach? Which
correct.
so unfortunately, some people do hide it.
So I think what we as ISC2 community we are endeavoring to do is to create that awareness in every conversation we have and to create that trust amongst non-ISC2 community, right? Because that's the conversation we need to have. I think amongst the community we have that trust. I think it's at all-time high.
I
So
see.
even without disclosing names of organizations, we can talk about the issue per se and say, oh, this is how that incident occurred, and this was the miss, or this is where we need to enhance our defenses, right? So that dialogue has to happen a lot more, May.
I agree. I agree. And you know what? You touched upon the chapter, so I do want to. I wasn't planning to touch upon the chapter, but let's touch upon the chapter.
So
So you're the founding president of the Sri Lanka chapter that is
I
very active, very active. How many members do you have now?
right now I would say over 150 members who are active,
Beautiful.
right? So there are new members who are joining, but we also have a exodus of professionals, looking at greater opportunities. So that number keeps fluctuating. So I was the founding member of the Chennai chapter, and I'm mentoring right now 3 chapters in India, Delhi, Mumbai, and Pune. And I am hopeful there'll be an announcement soon for Delhi and Pune that they're going to go live next
Yeah.
month. And Mumbai will be up and running in another 4 months.
Which is
So
amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the chapters because I also founded the Israel chapter at the time.
that's
Then I
right.
mentored and helped the UAE chapter, and we were both in the chapter advisory committee, very much involved in the chapter program.
That's
And
right.
I want to ask you a question. Why? Why did you and do you give your time for the chapter and for the chapter program so willingly? And you've been such an incredible advocate for this program and such an incredible volunteer. And I know that a lot of people ask me, May, why do you volunteer so much? So I want to ask you, why do you volunteer so much? Not just with
Okay.
ICT.
I'm going to give you an answer, and the word might surprise you. Selfish, right? Selfish
Okay.
for a good reason.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with money. We are a small community as cybersecurity professionals when you compare with other established professions like engineers, accountants, lawyers. The numbers are massive. So when they come together and make announcements or make statements, it's heard, right?
Was to be
So
reckoned with.
when I looked at Sri Lanka in 2004, there were hardly any CISSP locally, but there were Sri Lankans who were living overseas, but locally there weren't any. So there were 4 people who sat for the exams in 2005, and I was one of them. And the exams were not in Sri Lanka, so we had to go to India to do the exam. So all of us traveled there, or some traveled to Dubai, some traveled to Singapore. So one of the things I decided for myself when I walked out of the exam hall, if I passed the exam, right? Because we had to wait for 6 weeks to get our
Yeah,
results those
the
days,
time.
right? So,
It
so
was
that's
still pen
always
and
it.
paper. Oh gosh. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
6 hours.
I mean, that's another topic to discuss because I know that particular day, the supervisors got stuck in a traffic jam. They came 2 hours late. So an exam which was supposed to start at 9 started at 11:30,
Oh
and
gosh.
6 hours from there on. And I was like walking like this after the exam.
Yeah, it's. I took
But
the 6 hours, but not the one with pen and paper because I would have failed. It's just a matter of time until I would have missed one place, and yeah,
correct. So
it's a good thing
so
with
so I said,
computer.
we need to have this exam in the country, right?
Yeah.
I needed more people to stand shoulder to shoulder with me and talk about cybersecurity, and I can't do that alone. So I
Nice.
started having conversations with Clayton, based out of Hong Kong,
Yes.
and we went back and forth, and we said, let's do it. So I said, I will market the exam locally. So I used to go knocking on every organization and tell everyone, guys, do this exam, right? The only challenge everyone had was the cost of the exam.
Good.
So Clayton said, you need to have at least 10 people. 15 is ideal. So I have to campaign for at least 30 people. So at least when the registration starts, I have 15 people who can
Mhm.
register. The first time we had 5 people, 5 registered. The second time, we exceeded Clayton's expectations. So he wanted 15, we had 25.
Amazing. And I
Right?
love it
So,
that you say it's selfish because a selfish person would have gone out of the exam, say, look at me, I'm one of the very few who has it. That's it. I'm golden. So I don't think it's selfish. I understand what you're saying about you needed more people to stand shoulder to shoulder with you, but
correct.
you're the one who spent the time and the energy reaching out to Clayton, having those conversations, reaching out to numerous organizations and persuading them to spend the time and money and
Correct.
energy on studying and taking the exam. So
I
I
mean, I'll give
understand.
you another example, right? We were at the national conference, Clayton was there. We had signed off the chapter chartering application. Clayton goes, Sujit, Sri Lanka is done. Go to India.
Oh, easy. It's small. Yeah. Okay.
Right. He said,
Well, you
go
are.
to go to Bangalore. I said, Clayton, Chennai is much more easier. So let me start. He said, doesn't matter, wherever, right? Go get it done. So I went to India, spoke to a lot of people, and I went door to door collecting signatures. And it was one rainy day, started in the morning, went all over the place, collected the signatures to file the application. So when we had the chartering application approved, then we all met together to, formalize the chapter.
That
Right.
is
So
really
today, looking back, I could say, okay, we have 3 active chapters in India, Chennai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad, 3 coming up this year. So we've come a long way. Yeah.
it is amazing. And this is for me, it sounds like this is the legacy that you're leaving behind you in this industry. So many people, I'm guessing that some of the people in the Indian chapters, for example, maybe they don't even know you. Maybe they don't even know that you're the driving force that helped create this community. So I think that is a beautiful, beautiful legacy to leave behind you.
So, and May, one more point, right? Even today, even day before, somebody wrote to me, I don't know this person. I've never met this person. He writes to me saying, Sujit, I had registered for this particular exam and my ID has got locked. Can you help? Right. So I'm kind of the first point of contact for all their problems on the ground.
Which is amazing. And I want to emphasize again, you're a volunteer. And that's why I love this community. I'm a volunteer as well. I don't get paid by
Absolutely.
SE2.
Correct.
And I think that this is one of the amazing things that we were able to create, all of us together, create a
Absolutely.
community that each one of us is investing time and energy in helping this community. So I get the same. I get a lot of endorsement requests, I got stuck, my ID is locked. What do I do? I couldn't pay my
Right.
AMF, so we get a lot of these requests well before I was on the board. So today on the board, I try to navigate them to the right people,
That's right.
because I cannot ask for favors as a member of the board, but I can
Right.
definitely try and help them. And I think this is something beautiful that is happening in our community in the cybersecurity field.
And this is
So
what brings the uniqueness for the IC too, right? We are
I,
unique, right? I mean,
we try,
yeah,
we try.
exactly. And also, even let's say you have multiple meetings, and some of the meetings I have with even the when we were serving together at the advisory board, most of the meetings were very late in the evening for me, or it used to
Yeah.
be very early in the morning.
Hmm.
But it was never a problem, right? So,
Which
so
is
we
I
are just
love. I love this.
waiting to join those calls, right? We want to be part of it.
It's
So
amazing. I have to say, the main reason I joined and you know that, I joined the board of directors in hope to enhance our chapter program, because I think that the chapter program and the main member engagement program is one of the things that really differentiates
absolutely.
any membership association. It's not just IC2, but differentiate a membership association with just a training and certification body. So you talked about the fact that you're volunteering and how incredibly dedicated you are to the association and to this industry. And after so many years in this profession, I want to ask you, what keeps you motivated? Because I can see you love what you do.
It's not a job for me. Cybersecurity is not a job. It's not an 8 to 5 activity. Right? What I see myself as is, am I able to add value to somebody else's life? Can I make a difference? Can I solve a problem for them? Can I inspire them? Or can I forewarn them, say, hey guys, watch out. You tread this path, you're going to have issues. So kind of save them from trouble. So this is what it is about, right? So I can be on a holiday, still enjoy my holiday. I'm still doing work. Right? I'm at work, I'm still enjoying. Right now, I'm at work, I'm having a conversation with you.
Yeah,
Right? So,
I think we're very fortunate.
yeah, so both of us are in the same phase or same state in life where we are enjoying what we do. Right? I
And
mean,
it's a
I
gift.
never say, okay, it's tomorrow, I'm look forward to the weekend. And when people say weekend, I mean, what does that mean, right? It's another day, right? So that's what it is, mate.
It's a passion. I love that. And I think you and I and other people that we know, and I think that's what differentiates the people who are happy in their role as opposed to the people who are not happy in their role, is the passion that we have for this industry. And I think that this conversation, and I hope people listening to us, especially those people who feel maybe a little bit stuck and they're listening to Sujit saying that it's not a work, it's a passion and you do it on the weekend. They listen to me saying the same thing. It sounds, for some people, I think it sounds very much out of reach. And like, okay, so you're fortunate enough to be passionate about what you do. I can share from my experience, and I would love to hear from you. I wasn't always like that. I rolled into cybersecurity by chance. I did like it. I did sort of fall in love with this industry, and I found it fascinating from day one. But I wasn't sure that was something I want to do long term. Not at all. And I didn't really find my niche for many years. And actually, for me personally, volunteering and teaching actually helped me find this passion. So that's for me. And I would love to hear from you. Did you always feel so passionately about this industry, or did it something that evolved over time?
Evolved over a period of time, right? So I was always looking at doing something different and new. That's what got me started, right? So I'm going to share something which I did with ISARCA, right? So when I joined the ISARCA Sri Lanka chapter, it was in 2003. I joined the board directly, and there were 7 members, right? So again, right? What can we do? 7 members. We are not a force. So I took on the role of the chapter membership director. So my job was to campaign, get people to do the exams. And I used to spend the weekends teaching.
Ah,
right? And I still know that people, some of my friends now, they used to wait for me out of a meeting, or they know I'm there in that particular building. They say, Sujit, come, let's go dinner. And then they say, okay, I don't understand this. Can you explain this to me? Well, and all of them have reached a very good position in their professional life. And some of them even now tell me, Sujit, if you didn't tell us that day that you had a life here, we would be here. So when you hear that, you always feel that, there's a lot to give than to take.
I love that. And Sujit, thank you so much for sharing both your professional insights and your professional story and your background story. It's absolutely amazing. And as you know from on Cybermania, we always finish this conversation with a very short pop quiz, short questions, short answers, whatever comes to mind. Are you ready?
Ready.
Ready. Okay. So, what is one trait or mindset that you believe any successful cybersecurity leader needs?
Honesty.
Love that. Honesty. Good.
Even when you fail,
Even when you fail.
you need to be
Own it.
Own it and say yes. Right? I mean, I like what you did yesterday on LinkedIn. And
It was such a mess up.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
I'd give you an example, right? When I read that, I went back about 15 years ago. I had an important meeting and I overslept. Right? I woke up
Oh,
3 hours after the meeting, and this person actually asked me, why didn't you come for the meeting? I said, I'm very sorry, I overslept. And his reaction was, I was expecting you to tell me something else. I said, why would I tell you something else? This is what
To lie.
actually, right? I could have given you a different story, but I have to remember that all the time. Now I don't have to remember.
Yeah. So, exactly. So, honestly, I love that. What is your number one tip for staying motivated?
Staying motivated. Number one tip, be curious. Curious to learn.
Fantastic. I love it. If you could send a message to the cybersecurity community 10 years from now, what would it be?
From 10 years from now, keep learning.
That is a good tip. If you hadn't chosen a career in tech, what would you be doing today?
My parents wanted me to be a doctor.
My parents didn't want me to be a doctor. I wanted to be a doctor. My parents really didn't want me to be a doctor. Yeah, so, okay, fair enough. And last but not least, if you could go back in time, what's one piece of security advice you would have given your younger self?
Don't get fixated on one thing.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sujit,
And always listen to the other people's view.
oh, that is such an important
Right?
advice.
So when you're fixated, you completely lose sight of what others' views are. Right? So there could be a better idea out there, or there could be a better solution out there. Right? Speak less, hear more.
I love that. So we actually already finished recording, but then Sujit came up with a wonderful idea that I'm going to take him up on, and I'm going to start doing it, I think, in all the podcasts. So before we wrap this up, can you share like a message, one final insight that you want to share with the community?
So I have two messages. One for the community: be curious, continue to learn, explore.
I love that.
Don't fear about failures. Right? You will fail, but recover fast. That should be your motto. May for you keep inspiring, keep doing this. Right? I may not be saying this all the time when I see a post or this thing, but you do inspire, right? And I do share your messages with all the other friends and colleagues, and keep doing it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
wow, this is a wrap up that I did not expect. I did not put him up for it. I swear it wasn't, it wasn't me. So, thank you again so
From
much
the
for
bottom of
joining
my
me.
heart.
Thank you. Sujit, thank you so much for making up the time to join me again today. It was such a meaningful conversation, and I'm sure that people, if they listen all the way through, they will see this connecting line of sharing, caring, giving, receiving. It all works together. So I want to really thank you for coming and joining me today. And for those listening, I hope to see you here next time on Cybermania.